witches, and welcome back to A Coven of Two, where we talk witchcraft and activism. You can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they, and in today's video we're going to talk about witchcraft and activism. I'm talking about that because I asked here on YouTube, I made a poll, and thank you so much for actually saying, and most of you said we'd like to know about the problematic sides of witchcraft, and boy oh boy if I have stuff to say about that. As I mentioned in the first video, I'm a fat, queer, neurodivergent witch of color. So for me, activism is not an option. I know that I am not a person visibly of color. I have white passing privilege, I acknowledge that. But there are a lot of other things in which I am visible. I am a visibly queer person. Most times I align to femme, but I'm a non-binary person, so there are a lot of issues there as well that I personally experience. And something that I felt was worth starting with, and I think this will be a series, by the way, because there is so much to talk about in this area. And the first one, I think it's also the possibly the simpler one, the more clear-cut one. And it's about one of the ways that I think people get involved into witchcraft or get their first taste of, is magic and witchcraft actually a thing beyond, novels? And indeed, what novels? We're talking about the Harry Potter novels, and films, by the way. I noticed that a lot of creators who tend to be white, accidentally, cis and straight, they don't have a problem in mentioning that, they have a Hogwarts house. That's something that actually broke my heart when I was listening. I mean, I'm currently listening to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is a podcast about watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I'm one of those kids. I loved Buffy. Problematic as Joss Whedon is, and I think it's worth mentioning. And the two presenters are bisexual, they're married to each other, they're female identifying. So that's in a general vision of do you need activism? Do you need to care about activism? Well, in that case, yes. And one of them, I think, does. Their day job is to support the rights of LGBTQ people. Even they mentioned at times their Hogwarts house. Now, fair enough, this is a podcast that started in 2016, so maybe their point of view has changed. I don't know, I've just listened to the first two seasons. But that was kind of heartbreaking, because you would think that mentioning a Hogwarts house is something so completely and absolutely fine. Who's hurting that I'm mentioning that? And to answer that very quickly is we do not support the art of an artist whose vision want to be fascist towards the human rights of someone. The work that J.K. Rowling has done against trans people is scary. The kind of reach that she has, and she has used against trans people, giving misinformation about trans people, is just not something that needs to be supported in any way. And whoever tries to say, but you can't separate the art and the artist, that's a cop-out, because your entertainment is not more important than the human rights of someone else. That is the short version. If you want the long version of all the things that are wrong, not only with J.K. Rowling, but within the Harry Potter series. If you liked something like that, maybe it was part of your childhood, there were so many other novels and films that offered a better vision of the world, a more fair vision of the world. Terry Pratchett is one that comes up. I will send you to this video that Sean made. He's a video essayist from the UK, and everything is dissected so perfectly that there's nothing that I can add to it. But if you want to understand not only what is wrong with the view of J.K. Rowling on trans people, but also what was intrinsically wrong with the novels, and what do they tell us about the vision that she has of the world, and that is wrong, go watch that video. One on everything is the take that J.K. Rowling has on slavery with house elves. And something that keeps being repeated in all of her stories is how She supports the capitalistic idea that the individual can emerge, but the system doesn't need changing, which in a world like we're living in today, that is no longer an option. And if you can't quite understand because you're not at the receiving end of these issues, I think something that white, cis, straight people that are interested in paganism, though, can grasp is the concept of environmentalism. So, something that I have seen, even if you don't have marginalization problems, even if you come from a lot of privilege that you don't perceive to be privilege and think it's normal, if you are a pagan, you must feel the issue that we have with the way that the environment has been destroyed, climate change. You must feel the abuse that the world has gone through and the urge to change things, right? We're in agreement on that? So in that sense, you do understand that there are things of the system, of the capitalistic system, that go against something good and that deserves taking care of, like the planet. So if you understand that, that's where I think you can start to grow empathy, because the system, capitalism, the patriarchy, the standard, the status quo is there to keep things as they are, and they're not going well. And if you do not understand it and experience on any other level, take environmentalism, and that is where you start to expand your vision. And then when you apply the kind of abuse that is on the planet, it's applied to people that are different looking, that are different in who they identify as, that are different because of their skin color. These things add up, intersectionality for you. So if you do not have personal experience, I think starting from the idea that everybody in the pagan world appreciates how bad the situation with climate change is, that should be where you start. Why is it so draining to talk about this stuff? To expand on that, actually, when you think about practices and folk practices and regional magic, it is something that is worth expanding, because the system has destroyed the source of a lot of magic that we would know differently today, and the way that it has evolved and survived in practices like hoodoo, for example. Like, we need to be mindful of where those things are from, and it wouldn't be there like that if there hadn't been issues brought on by the system like, I don't know, slavery. Also, as a note on the matter of the views that J.K. Rowling has insanely against trans people, which is actually not quite true. Her againstness goes specifically against trans femmes, which probably spurs from her own trauma with male violence, but that's where she goes wrong. Then her upset should be taken against men, which are not trans women. And that's an enormous issue, and she conflates the two things, and her words get to so many people that they are just taken as facts. The fact that she spent times to write essays for people to take wrong information about trans people is ill-intentioned enough. So we do not promote the art of someone like that, because you project the art into the future, into eternity. You project the person and their ideas. And that's why, I guess, we don't necessarily read Mein Kampf that much anymore, you know? Also, something truly important to understand about folk magic and everything that came before white colonialism is that in most countries around the world, in Africa, in South Asia, the concept of gender was not binary. Like, there have been, for what I know, even in Native American people, the idea of the gender binary applied is something that white colonialists have brought in, but every actual culture used to see it as more fluid and actually look up to people who today we would consider transgender, that would be in between genders, that would be gender fluid. They would be called upon when babies were born to bless them. And this is a personal knowledge, just because, again, I've mentioned before, I am an educator in my everyday life on matters of queer rights of people of color. And something that I've done very recently was actually talk to people, talk to refugees, and have them explain, you know, one of the main issues with homophobia, with transphobia, actually comes with colonialism, not with Abrahamic religion, not with Islam, not with Christianity. Colonialism is what brought these things down. And part of these things was also part of the tradition and the concept of folk magic that was around it, the way that these people were seen in not adhering to just one gender expression was seen as magic, as blessed, and colonialism has destroyed that. So as pagans, those things have value, should have value, and so maybe, just maybe, here's a crazy idea, for the pleasure of our entertainment, no matter how much it affected our gilded childhood, maybe, just maybe, we do not project into eternity the work of someone that actually doesn't know and doesn't respect anything that we do as pagans, because her transphobic views are directly against the folk traditions that would have survived to this day had colonialism not arrived first. I will never manage to do one of these videos chilled. And I know that I will be policed for that, because when you say something in a certain manner, you are perceived as passionate and fiery if you're also white and skinny. But if you're not, you're an angry person that has an attitude problem. So if you're thinking that, I think we can say goodbye here. But if you are not, and if you understand and care, and maybe never thought about this stuff, because that's the thing, that's the reason why I wanted to do this video. In a certain way, I do come from privilege. A lot of things I took for granted in my life until they were taken away from me, which I think is how most people live. And so that's why we don't understand privilege, because how is it not normal? Like, doesn't everybody have a roof over their head? No. But we have it and we take it for granted. That's an example. So I do appreciate that millennials especially have grown up with Harry Potter. Is their idea of childhood, and so it connects them to all those romantic views that once it's in the past makes childhood all golden, and then that beautiful nostalgia. So Harry Potter probably is part of that. I was already a bit older, so it didn't affect me that way. But my spouse, for example, they grew up with Harry Potter. They grew up reading the books. But that is entertainment. And even if you don't have skin in the game, hopefully now understanding the tip of the iceberg, and again, I will send you to Sean's video if you want to understand better not only why JK is wrong as a person in her views, but what was wrong in the world of Harry Potter itself. I will remind you to go to watch Sean. But that is the reason why, once you notice these things, even if you have privilege, and now you know a tiny bit more about where trans people come from, about where people of color come from in their vision of queerness and non-gender binary. Now that you know a tiny bit more, maybe you can appreciate that just films or books that might connect you to your childhood might not be more worthy than the existence of these people. And the fact that we project, again, the art of a person that has bad views on these people into the future, project their views in the future as well. So when you wonder, I'm just one person, what can I do? You can stop talking, tweeting, posting about your Hogwarts house. It's a small thing, but when a lot of people do it, then Harry Potter will be out of the zeitgeist, and maybe in time, so will be the incredibly badly transphobic views of J.K. Rowling. If you feel like you're just one person, though, and your entertainment and your nostalgia is more important than the effects that those things have on people who are affected by this thing and you're not because of your privilege. I hope the sorting hat doesn't put you into slittering, I guess, but I think that's kind of the point. I hope this was useful in some ways. I hope that the meaning of my words can go further than my tone, if you want to police that. Hopefully not. Hopefully, if you're here and you're a pagan and you're interested in these things, you can appreciate the importance of that. I think, yeah, the most important thing to take away from this video is not only, you know, it's so nice and so romantic that maybe your first tiptoeing in witchcraft came from Harry Potter, but that doesn't need to remain or continue. And these might be the reasons why. And if it's not so much because maybe you don't know a trans person in your life, well, you do now. Maybe you don't know it in your everyday life. But if you're interested in magic and folk magic, now you know, if you didn't before, and you can appreciate how damaging colonialism per se has been towards the expression of magic there was through gender fluidity. So if for nothing else, for the care that you have about the origin of this practice, try to be more open-minded, less queerphobic, less transphobic, and one way to show that is to leave Hogwarts behind. You're seeing me dressed like this, not because I am just into the commercial aesthetic of witchiness, but because I'm going pumpkin picking with some friends today. And I always like to go to pumpkin patches like this because rarely someone in the pumpkin patch is actually hired as an actor to be there, but children love it and they will ask me for pictures and all of that, and I just have lots and lots of fun doing that with them. So just in case there was the perception of, oh, you're into this just for the aesthetic, by all means I love the aesthetic, but this doesn't have to do with witchiness. I just happen to be dressed like that today.